told Amy Haar, who watches both online and attends in person with her husband and 3 children, that we are doing a series on the movie Encanto. She said, "My kids watched that movie and were appalled at the family's behavior. They asked her, 'Why is the family acting like that?'" It's a valid question if you've seen the film. What's wrong with this beautifully adorable, magical family? When I mentioned to a UCC pastor about our sermon series, she said, "That's so interesting. I've been trying to talk about family systems and specifically church family systems. What a creative way to address things that most of us stick our heads in the sands over." It's hard to talk about family dynamics, isn't it? It takes Mirabel and her abuela, which is Spanish for grandmother, an hour and a half in movie time before they finally talk or yell it out. How long does it take your family to address its brokenness? When Pastor Brian finally watched Encanto so that he can help me preach this sermon series, he said, "This isn't a movie for kids. This is a movie for adults." Yep. This movie has just as much to say to adults, and perhaps more so than it does for children who sometimes just walk away with, "We don't talk about Bruno," stuck in their heads. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Bruno isn't until week 3, and Abuela and Mirabel aren't until week 4. Today is Louisa. Now, if you're at home, obviously you're at home, raise your hand if you've seen the movie Encanto all the way through. In Mirabel's family, she has 2 older sisters. The strong sister, as Addie Skaith said, and the flower princess. My question to those of you who have seen the movie is, who of you thinks Louisa is the older sister and who of you thinks Isabella is? I need to confess something. I planned out this entire family system Encanto series based on my omniscient knowledge, otherwise known as assumption, that Louisa was the oldest sister. And then 2 weeks ago, I discovered that she is in fact the middle child. I refused to believe it until I discovered musical director Jared Bush explaining the family order in a series of Twitter tweets. I'm so annoyed that Disney messed up the characteristics of an older child so incredulously that they made her the overburdened caretaker of her siblings, being crushed by family expectations, and who has an eye twitch. The middle child? Come on, Disney. Do better. Think back with me over the thousands of families listed in the Bible. Isaac's boys, Esau, the older twin, and Jacob, the younger twin, worker bee, and mama's boy who steals his brother's inheritance. The prodigal son story. Oldest son, hard-working heir to the family business. Younger son, party animal. Jacob's 12 boys, all hard-working with the sheep and the corn, except, of course, the second to youngest son, a dream catcher who wears Prada, and the youngest son, who's still a baby and doesn't really count. Martha and Mary and Lazarus. Now you know Martha is the oldest one in that family. Can someone tell my sister to quit socializing and get up in here into this kitchen and help me? Honestly, the Hebrew scriptures, and especially the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, are all about siblings and how they behave or don't get along, how they help, hurt, forgive, even murder each other. There's Cain and Abel, Ishmael and Isaac, Jacob and Esau, Aaron, Miriam and Moses. It's also all about how parents screw up their kids with favoritism, deception, or even a love so vast you'd stick a baby in a basket in a river. Hello, crocodiles, anyone? But honestly, look at what Moses' mother so desperately performed to save him from genocide. And we wonder why mothers from Mexico and Guatemala and other countries make the suicidal trek across the desert to reach America, only to be stuck in detention centers, separated from their children, raped, or flown to Massachusetts. Systems and families, systems. Anyway, that's why I figured Louisa was the oldest. She's like me, and I told my therapist the first time I saw the movie, overworked, over anxious, plagued with a feeling of responsibility and guilt, and don't forget the eye twitch. But then I watched the movie again and realized, oh no, I'm Isabella too, the actual oldest magical sister. I'm the perfectionist trying to make the best decisions for her family despite her own desires and ingenuity. So I shared this new discovery with my therapist, and then I warned her that she was going to have to watch the movie herself if I was going to get anything out of these therapy sessions. Because of course, next week I was convinced that I am the Bruno of my family. So yeah, I wanted Louisa to be the oldest, and I was annoyed that Disney messed up my sermon series. I'm also annoyed that once upon a time I would have had to look that Disney information up in a card catalog or on microfiche, but instead I found the reference on Twitter. Convenient? Yes. Annoyed that research has been reduced to Twitter? You betcha. Unfortunately, my opinions don't matter to anyone except myself. And the Encanto music director has confirmed that Isabella, the perfect sister who makes everyone happy by spreading flowers everywhere, is the oldest. I mean, there's merit to that argument too. Younger siblings often complain about having to live up to the expectations or the precedent set by their older siblings. So I guess it does make sense. Mirabel certainly resents Isabella. But again, today is Louisa's day, so let's give it to her. Now, if you're sitting at home by yourself, you can raise your hands. But if you're like sitting with your family or with a bunch of friends over brunch, don't raise your hands. The only person I will out is myself. Who here feels overburdened? How about anxious? Are you afraid your perseverance, your drive, your strength will give out? Who feels broken and can't find their place in the world without a sense of purpose? Will you be worthless if you aren't accomplished? Who is too afraid their world will fall apart if they lay in the grass and drink a pina colada? If they sit on the couch and watch an hour of RuPaul's Drag Race? If they hide for 20 minutes under the dining room table just to close their eyes? I'm speaking hypothetically, but clearly every mother raised their hand in spirit on that one. How about the rest of you? Without your provision, supervision, and protection, who will be left uncared for? But wait, if I could take the crushing weight of expectation, would it free some room up for joy or relaxation or simple pleasure? It's not hard to play connect the dots on this, and I bet you're starting to guess what Manuel was reading in Spanish a little earlier. But it is hard to follow the dots once they're connected, because it's so easy to do what we're good at. And when we've spent a lifetime or 20 years or even just 3 years in a pandemic learning defense systems and coping mechanisms and resolving to be stronger and get through fill in the blank, it's just easier to turn a blind eye to our needs. Maybe that's where the eye twitch comes from. But when we deny ourselves what we need, indeed what has been ordained for us, we become like Louisa, Under the surface, I feel berserk as a tightrope walker in a 3-ring circus. Under the surface, was Hercules ever like, yo, I don't want to fight Cerberus? Under the surface, I'm pretty sure I'm worthless if I can be of service. A flaw or a crack, a straw in the stack. What breaks a camel's back? What breaks a camel's back? It's pressure like a drip, drip, drip that'll never stop. Whoa. Y'all, we gotta stop. And I cannot tell you the irony of this coming out of my mouth. I can barely manage my life with 3 part-time jobs and being a mom and keeping up my house. I haven't read a book in 2 years. I haven't performed on stage in 10 months. And until 2 weekends ago, I hadn't been on a vacation since 2019. But we gotta stop. That eye twitch, remember? That backache? That cloudy brain? The stomach issues? The vertigo, lack of balance, the confusion? We gotta stop. We gotta go back to the beginning and take care of ourselves. What did Manuel read to us? How many of you know? Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days a week you shall labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You shall not do any work. Not you, not your son or daughter, not your male or female slave, not your livestock, nor the alien resident in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heaven and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but rested the 7th day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and consecrated it. Exodus 20:8-11, the 4th of the 10 Commandments. I could go back earlier than this, of course, all the way to Genesis 1, but I feel like the 10 Commandments are sufficiently far enough back. Plus, they made a movie about them, too. I'm pretty sure it was made in Hollywood, so that probably means a white guy was playing Middle Eastern Moses. I don't know. I really only watch Disney. Point number 1 is rest is essential. Or we will die, ants marching one by one, hurrah. Point 2, it is also essential that we see one another. Give it to your sister's older. Give her all the heavy things we can't shoulder. Give it to your sister's stronger. See if she can hold on a little longer. Give it to your sister, it doesn't hurt, and see if she can handle every family burden. Give it to your sister and never wonder if the same pressure would have put you under. Who bears the burden in your own family? Mirabel saw her sister Louisa starting to buckle under the pressure. And the more she tried to encourage Louisa to relax, the more Louisa cried at the possibility. At first because she was freaked out about losing her gift of strength, but later out of gratitude to be able to share her feelings. Sometimes I cry, she sings. So do I, her sisters sing back. Who bears the burden in your own family? Is it hard to acknowledge that question? Are you her? Are you not her? And your guilt reminds you of that daily, monthly, or only on holidays? Are you clueless that there are even dynamics at work in your family? Or are you just in denial? Y'all, we've got to see one another. God says, you shall not do any work, not you, but also not your son or your daughter, not your male or female slave, not your livestock, nor the alien residents in your town. If the ship doesn't swerve when it hears how big the iceberg is, then someone's got to intervene. We need to intervene for all the oldest or middle siblings' sakes. We need to intervene for our family members, for our flesh and blood, estranged or close, embarrassing or entertaining. How are we at helping or hindering one another? Who needs to sit and rest? Who needs to ask themselves, would the same pressure have pulled me under? But it's not just our family who need to rest. Read the rest. Check out that list in Exodus. We need to intervene for all the servant leaders' sakes, for the teachers and social workers and pastors and school counselors. We need to intervene for the immigrants or the unhoused or uneducated working for $7 or $10 an hour for 10 hours a day, who then rest under bridges, behind bushes, or tucked in crevices. We need to intervene for those who could not find rest and turn to drugs or violence to stop the madness. We need to intervene for the children whose family systems don't allow for safety and restful security. We need to intervene for the foster parents and adoptive parents and court advocates who work tirelessly so those children can rest easily. We need to intervene for the single parents. We need to intervene on behalf of the overworked healthcare providers, especially if we enter another pandemic. And we need to not shame those who left the profession, those who understood the toll on their mental and physical health and chose themselves and their families over toxic systems. And we have to remember it's personal. If someone I described isn't a stranger to you, but is someone in your family, can you bring yourself to see them? And it's personal if you consider yourself part of a church or this church or the church community at large. Who do we assume will pick up a project? Who never says no? Who is about to burn out from giving all the time? If you are that person, take a Sabbath. Ask for help. If you're not that person, can you bring yourself to see them, to advocate for them, to step up, to help them rest? All three sisters carried the heavy flower pot after Louisa lost her magic strength. And as always, we all need to see and be seen and rest and intervene. What else is new? It started in Genesis 1 when God rested. It carried through Jesus' own self-care on boats and in gardens. And it continued into the early church when the unnamed author, supposed to be Paul, wrote the 4th chapter of Hebrews. That wild goose. Even he knew when it was time to take a breather. Y'all, we gotta stop. Help me stop, and I will help you stop. And once we're stopped and resting, maybe our minds will be prepared to do the hard but good work of looking at our family systems. And let's make sure no one cracks or breaks from being under pressure.